help those who aren't as comfortable as many of us. So let me begin with Jeff Bialik. Jeff, nice to see you here. And you retired earlier this year from Catholic Charities after many years of working in Marin County. Tell us a little bit about your background and what really drove you to get involved in this kind of work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here this evening, and I also want to express to the Marin Interfaith Council the opportunity to... Sorry? Cannot hear?
It's on, so...
It is on.
Not close enough.
It's not close enough? Is this better?
Okay.
So I just wanted to express my appreciation to the Marin Interfaith Council for this evening and for the opportunity to be here, and to all the sponsors, especially gratified. Dominican sisters are here because I think that I would not be in Marin County but for the Dominican sisters and Dominican College, which is how my wife and I happen to be able to be here in this beautiful community. But I think the question in terms of how do we get involved in this work, and with my wife and my children are here this evening. My sister Cindy is also here. And we had the blessing to grow up with a wonderful family with terrific parents who filled our home with love, and our father, who himself was orphaned and raised as a foster child, who still, even though he grew up with very little, if he had $2 in his pocket, he would give one away to try to help someone who he saw as being less fortunate than himself. And I think that the reason we are called to this work and to this service is a sense that we belong. We are part of a community. We are part of something greater than ourselves. Our faith has obviously been an important component of that. And so whenever you're given the opportunity to be involved in this work, I don't think you can help but be touched by it and to want to leverage whatever resources, whatever talents you might have to try to make life better for other people. So I just feel it's pretty much come very much second nature to myself and to those of us who enter into this work. But I think it really started with the foundation that our parents gave to us, the privileges that we've had in this world, the sense that we have an obligation to give back, and then a deep sense of faith that there is something greater than ourselves, and it's really important that we not lose sight of that, that at the end of the day, we're all children of God, and we're all the same. We just have different opportunities.
And Jeff, in the work that you did with Catholic Charities, what did you find most gratifying that you were able to contribute to this community?
I think the thing that's probably for me the most gratifying in my work with Catholic Charities and with Dominican College and other places is that opportunity to make a difference. And I think that so many of us in our lives, we sometimes don't have the chance to see concretely and directly the impact of our work. And when you're working at a place like Catholic Charities, and I'm so grateful they were a sponsor tonight, and there's people here from Catholic Charities as well, that when you have that opportunity to directly see every day that an individual's life has been changed for the better because of the contribution that you have made, I cannot think of anything more gratifying than that.
And is there, I'm putting you on the spot here, but could you name a family that you saw, on the brink of homelessness or perhaps homeless, and you're able to follow through and see them land on their feet and then, rebuild?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things you see almost daily at an organization like Catholic Charities and others like that. We had the opportunity when I was with Catholic Charities to take a former convent this was in San Francisco, and turn it into a home for single moms and their kids who were suffering from homelessness. And so when you have the opportunity to go into that environment and get to know these individuals who a week earlier had been homeless, children going to school, perhaps living in a car if they were lucky, or on someone's couch, and then to be able to work with that family, bring them out of homelessness into a loving, caring environment where they then had the opportunity to have a safe place to live, to have access to nutrition and good health care, the opportunity to rebuild their lives, and then to move into something that really I think, bore witness to their inherent dignity, I think that really does make a difference in a big way.
Thank you. Katie Crecelius?
Being kind of an activist renter back just after I got out of college was kind of what did it, and then going to graduate school and kind of specializing in housing. So my career, my professional career has been in affordable housing, actually. Haven't really made very much money, and it's a good thing that I really didn't have to pay the rent. But I have had, I have been actually paid occasionally to do that. And my affordable housing advocacy grew out of that professional involvement. After you've been to 2 or 3 or 4 contentious planning commission meetings and city council meetings advocating for a particular development, then what came to me is, well, I really would like to be a change agent and try to mitigate and overcome some of this hostility, which I did as a volunteer. And so...
Talk a little bit about the County Planning Commission, because that gave you an overview of the entire county and where the opportunities are and where the needs are.
Right, I served on the Planning Commission for the county, for the unincorporated county, from 2007 to 2016. And actually, the Planning Commission doesn't do a whole lot about affordable housing. So I learned a tremendous amount about land use all over the county. And it was really, I saw a lot of places that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. I got lost in a lot of places in Marin, going out to see the various sites, that were under consideration. But I really did appreciate my service there, and there were 2 housing elements which were written during the time that I was there. And I am aware of vacant land in the county that has been kind of roped off in the unincorporated county, and for political reasons, there's a big, moat around it and a drawbridge.
And what position is that drawbridge in?
It is definitely up. It is up. Does that answer your question?
Next, I want to ask you about your work with Stand Up for Neighborly Novato, and I have to disclose that I worked for that organization and helped produce a package of videos when the issues in Novato were really coming to a head. And let me explain that I was so impressed with this group because they were developing messages to overcome the opposition, not by confrontation, but by modeling and by using members of our community to communicate the direct needs for workforce housing for college graduates who don't want to live with their parents, and for seniors. These are key subsets of our community that are most affected by the housing crisis. So talk a little bit about Stand Up for Neighborly Novato. What brought that organization into being, and what you feel you were able to achieve?
Well, the Stand Up for Neighborly Novato came into existence in response to some very noisy and vitriolic opposition to the whole process of writing a housing element in the city of Novato. And so there were about 6 of us who were the board, and so we had really a campaign, an education campaign for 3 years, and did receive some funding from the Marin Community Foundation, which was very helpful. So we did a lot of attendance at various council meetings and planning commission meetings, and we have these wonderful videos that Peter produced, which might still be up on the Stand Up for Neighborly Novato website if you go. You might.
They're on YouTube.
They're on, yeah.
They're up on YouTube.
Right. So if you want to see an example of advocacy videos, and they were pretty good.
And do you feel that you achieved your goals?
No.
Do you feel you made a difference?
Yes, and I'll tell you the one piece of it that I think we made some difference with is that we recruited Spanish-speaking folks to come and get leadership training and to learn, you know, what a city council meeting was, what do you do at a city council meeting, what's the protocol, teach them kind of housing 101, and all of our materials were in Spanish, and I am very proud of that, because for a long time I had wanted to reach out to the Spanish-speaking community. And I think that was successful, and I'm hoping that those folks really are carrying forward in terms of their willingness to speak out and feeling confident about it. And I was, at the end of this, I was going to talk a little bit about being a change agent, but when I say no, I think what we all have to remember, that changing hearts and minds, excuse me, is a really long process.
Yes, it is.
So 3 years of effort isn't enough time.
Started a real estate business account in San Francisco that became, I guess, the largest residential brokerage in town. Is this better? Sorry. My parents started a residential real estate business in San Francisco, which became the largest, I think, west of the Mississippi. So I grew up with real estate. It was like 24/7, which caused me to decide I didn't want to go into real estate. My father would like to do so, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. But what I learned from them was that real estate is for everything. And so I got training from them, not only in real estate, but across the board in terms of egalitarian treatment of everyone. My parents were activists, basically, in social justice issues. My mother was an active member of the Anti-Defamation League, which deals with tolerance as well as respect for all minorities, not just Jewish ones. And one of the lessons I got was that we lived in a nice neighborhood near Stonestown, nice white neighborhood near Stonestown, and someone there was a black person who was proposed as a buyer down the street. Someone approached my father saying, you know, you're in the real estate business, you need to do something about this because our neighborhood's going to be ruined. Property values are going to go down. And the lesson I got was that my father went out door to door and told people that if the people could afford the homes, they were not going to bring down the values, that they were just like the rest of us. And that's the kind of lessons I got from my parents. I was raised in a conservative synagogue in San Francisco, Beth Shalom, which had a Polish rabbi who spoke his mind. He would call it. He was one of the leaders in the civil rights movement. He was a martyr of Selma. He would say things even though big donors in the synagogue might be offended if he thought it was right. And so I learned from him and from my parents that you need to speak out. And so that's where my background comes from.
And Stephen, one of the elements here that we're honoring is vision. And you got involved with ecumenical housing back in the 1980s. So explain what you found at that time and what led to your decades-long commitment in this regard.
Well, what started with EAH, I got angry. I went to a neighborhood meeting. There was a housing proposal of 60 sweat equity owner-built homes that was going to be built maybe 500 yards from my home. And I went to an informational meeting, and everyone was screaming about the teenage roving gangs that were going to be there, and the floods that were going to happen because the drainage would be affected, and this and that. It was all the usual stuff that we hear. And I got up and started yelling, not yelling, but I can get emotional. And where are my children going to live? And I wasn't about my children, one of whom is here tonight, but my children collectively. Where are they going to live if this is the way we are? And so I became a neighborhood spokesman for the project, which we got through the town. But then there was a referendum, and all the uglies came out. And I got 8 letters and 8 phone calls, and I eventually went on the board of the AH. The project was killed with the referendum, and now there are 6 mega homes on the site that should have had 60 affordable homes. That's Marin County. So that's
And that's even before the term McMansion was developed.
That's right.
Thank you. Now, let me ask each of you.
Not that long ago.
Well, talk about your spiritual odyssey, if you will, and what drew you to convert to Catholicism, and how that informed the work.
Well, I spoke earlier about our parents, and so my father was raised Catholic, our mother was raised Assemblies of God, so you could kind of get a sense of where that was going, it took a while, but eventually I was baptized Lutheran. and that sort of was sort of the way it was, and as I went through all the catechism classes and everything else, but when the time came to be confirmed, I rebelled and felt like I had a problem with organized religion, and so I was happy to go through most of my life up until a while back to not make that commitment. But I will tell you what began to change was in 1991 I took a job at Dominican College. And I became acquainted with the Dominican Sisters of San Rafael, 2 of whom are right over here, Sister Mary and Sister Bernadette. And I had the opportunity to see Catholicism up close through the lens of social justice. And it really spoke to me, and it really spoke to what I wanted to be, and certainly how I wanted to live my life. And as part of that, I had the opportunity to work with Sister Aquinas Nimitz, who, before she was a Dominican sister, she actually converted as well to Catholicism. And her father was Chester Nimitz, you may have heard of him. What I saw in Sister Aquinas was an individual who had multiple degrees from Stanford and Berkeley, doctorate degrees, was incredibly accomplished, and yet the most humble and the most caring and giving person I had ever met. And I said, that's what I strive to be. And then as I got to know organizations like Catholic Charities, Catholic Relief Services, St. Vincent de Paul, it really spoke to me that when it came to social justice, when it came to caring for others, when it came to really walking in the footsteps of Christ, if you will, Catholicism seemed to be that path. And so that's basically where I made that choice. And fundamentally, when I think about there's the Catholic Church, they've been around a few thousand years, and a couple thousand years, and they've had the opportunity to build a theology of social work and social justice. And it really speaks to fundamentally what so many religious traditions speak to, which is that the inherent dignity of each and every single person, that every single life is precious. And it takes it to the point that human life is more precious than other things. And so I think, and so we have a calling, we have an expectation that we are to look out for each other, that there is a obligation to care for each other, that if we are going to live in right relationship to God, we must live in right relationship with each and every single one of us. And if someone is not housed, if someone doesn't have proper nutrition, if someone isn't properly cared for, that's a reflection not just on an individual, that's a reflection on the entire community. And it really speaks to, there's an element in Catholic social teaching that says that the primary test of any social policy is whether it adds to or detracts from the common good. And when I look at some of the issues we face today, and I see so many issues that are not addressing the common good, they're addressing the individual good. And I think the church speaks to that
tell us about your personal connection to the Christian Scientist faith and how it has led you to this kind of work and activism.
Well, I have been a Christian Scientist all my life, so I don't know any other way, really, to deal with life, but really through prayer. And I'm so happy to see so many of my friends from the Christian Science Church in Novato here. It's wonderful to have them here. Really, each of those some 30-odd small housing developments that I have worked on over 25 years, each of the foundations is based on prayer. It really is. And prayer has helped me mitigate my own emotional reactions when things seem to be very, very tough and there's a lot of vocal opposition. It's also helped me stay balanced and poised and patient when the bureaucratic procedures for funding and for land use approvals seem endless and unnecessarily onerous. And so my own prayers have really helped me go forward. And they are prayers of affirmation of God's care and God's goodness. And also confident that divine love has a plan, and that the housing that's being worked on is definitely a good idea, and that God is on the field and has actually figured out the solution, even though I may not know what it is. So my faith tradition has been very much a part of my work.
So I have two questions, and we've used up a fair amount of our time, so let's, and this is for group discussion, so let's try to keep it to 2 or 3 minutes for each. Where do you find common ground with people in your own faith community and outside it when it comes to these contentious issues, particularly people you may respect for their spirituality and commitment to faith, but who nevertheless might be called NIMBYs? So let me ask Jeff to kick it off, and feel free to chime in. I'm going to try to get out of the way.
Well, I would say that certainly within the Catholic faith tradition, right now we have a secret weapon. It's called Pope Francis. which I think has given us the opportunity to really exemplify the social justice elements of the Catholic teaching. But I think it's really important to recognize that we've seen this in our elections, we've seen it in our community, that people do have a tendency to not always follow their faith when it comes to issues that could be perceived as self-interest. And so I do think that the faith is a good place, a starting place, and whether it's the prayer, the mass, whatever, but I think that's just a starting place. It's not where we're going to end. We need to engage in empathetic listening, and we need to engage in conversation and dialogue and really strive to understand each other. But I think the faith gives us that ability, and I reference the Pope quite often.
Can I go back to the question I didn't get asked just for a moment? I just want to say that for me, I feel comfortable in my Judaism. There's 613 laws, but I'm just concerned about living a good life, being fair, being good to people, doing justice. And to me, that is leading the Jewish life. And so that's where I come from, and a belated welcome to my synagogue, Rosh Shalom. But now I'll go on to the question you just asked. That was my brief. For me, the folks that I come across in my congregation, as well as in the interfaith community, we're all aligned. I know there are others out there, but it seems to me that the ones that I see are all on the same page. For me, the problem is getting them to break the silence. It is easy for us to be quiet and let things happen. And difficult is to step up and speak out, to go to the public hearings, to make the speech to the commissioners, the planning commissioners, which I've done, to the Board of Supervisors, to the local cities and towns, to write the letters, to write the Marin Voices, to basically put ourselves on the line for those beliefs that we all hold. Everyone here in this room, I suspect, all holds that. You wouldn't have come here to honor 3 people for supporting affordable housing if you weren't. We need people speaking out.
In terms of dealing with people who disagree with me, which I don't understand how that could be, but there are some people who actually do disagree with me. And the only thing that I have found that really does work is conversation, discussion, very fact-based, but at the same time recognizing the emotion behind the issues. And in the formation of a group that Steve and I both belong to, the Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative, the beginning of that organization, which is now 10 years old, was discussions between environmental advocates and housing advocates. And at that time, there was a lot of conflict between environmentalists and affordable housing. We had a small group. We talked for hours and hours and hours in a very safe environment, breaking down all of the issues, starting with, what is a site that should be environmentally protected, and going through a whole lot of details about that. And out of those conversations grew a wonderful organization now, and it grew a sense of collaboration and a sense of trust. So I really think that that is the key. Now it doesn't work with everybody, because some people can't really listen. All they can do is talk, But in those times when the opportunity is there, and there is someone who's willing to listen and be thoughtful, it's a winner.
So about unfinished business, what do you see the work that remains to be done, and who do you see working on that? Because each of you is in a position that we could declare you emeritus. But I know you're still concerned about the issues and committed to the work. So, number one, what are the issues that remain to be addressed, and who do you hope, perhaps in this room, will pick up the baton? And let me shuffle the order and start with you, Stephen, because I skipped you before.
Well, being in Marin and advocating for housing of any sort, affordable or McMansion, it's a task, and it's frustrating, particularly those of us that are interested in affordable housing. It's just a real frustration, and what we need are more and more allies, and we need to raise our kids as we've done. I've raised 2 rabbis who are activists, and I can already tell that my grandson was an activist. He's not a silent vote either. That's what we need to do, is we as individuals need to elect the right people. It needs to be an issue when there's a supervisor or a councilman, council person running for office. We need to ask the questions. We need to put the right people in office. We need to get people who are willing to take stands and take a risk of maybe getting voted out of office for doing the right thing. That's what's missing, I think. And because if we just leave things happen, 101 is going to be even worse next year than it is now.
All right, Katie?
Well, I started to talk about this earlier, and about when I answered your question with an abrupt no. When I started out just telling myself that I wanted to be a change agent and became involved with the Novato Housing Coalition. I don't know if Nani is still here, but she was one of the early founders. There she is right in front of me. And then the Novato Housing Coalition morphed into Stand Up for Neighborly Novato. I really wanted to be a change agent. I am very pragmatic, I'm very mission oriented. And what I've learned is is that it takes a lot of endurance. And I think when you ask about passing the baton or the mantle, as it were, the organization that I put a lot of trust in is the Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative. Because they do have a website, they have a monthly newsletter. I invite you all to find them on Google. There is a really committed group of people. Steve is going to be one of the co-chairs next year. So I'm feeling good about that, but I also just think it takes a lot of patience. Along the way, you will form wonderful relationships with people who share your values, and that's a pretty special thing.
And Jeff, are you really retired?
I have retired from Catholic Charities, and I am continuing to do work and continuing to want to be involved in this important work we're doing here. Sometimes I think you have actually more ability to do things if you're outside of an institutional setting than you are when you're inside of an institutional setting, and I certainly found that out to be true. And so, and I would echo what Stephen has said. I think the incredible work, MEC is an amazing organization, and I really echo that. I also think that the Marin Organizing Committee has really showed us a way to get to an important part of the discussion. I think the postcards or the cards that people signed that can be useful as we move forward through elections, and to really, because at the end of the day, I think we just need to recognize we are in a political campaign. And if we care about housing, we're losing. And at the end of the day, it's going to be who has the most votes. And that's how we're going to win. And we're going to have to continue to be filled with integrity, to continue to speak the truth, to continue to make the case, but we have to recognize that all the money we spend on education is for naught if a child doesn't have a place to live. And we know that. We know that in our communities we are outlawing sleeping. We're not allowing people to even have a place to lay their head down, and we know the long-term effects of that. So we know that these are important issues, and we believe in them, and we have a political structure that has, through our land use, has allowed the inequity in our community to get worse. And this isn't speaking to the values I think that most of us share in this community. So I think we're going to need to take the tools and the techniques that we've already built, that have already been built by wonderful people, and take that now to the next level. And maybe a little less talking and a little more acting. I still believe in discussion, but I also think we need to demonstrate through our votes that these are important issues and that there will be a consequence for individuals who say one thing during the campaign and do something else when they're in office.
Jeff, Katie, Stephen, congratulations, and thank you very much on behalf of the